Is it working?
It's running.
It's running. Would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Orthwein.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Let the record show that also present, Town Manager Greg Denham, Staff Attorney Edward Pizarro, Police Chief Ed Allen, and myself.
Thank you very much. We've been presented with the minutes from our last meeting on October 11th. Those have been reviewed. Are there any corrections, additions, comments?
Yes, I have one bear with me.
Sir?
It is going to be on page 5, about 3/4 the way down. It states that one other lien reduction, Gulfstream, it was 15%. We need to include of the amount.
After the 15%, there should be the word of prior to the amount. With that change made, are there any other additions or corrections? If not, a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes. Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein. Mayor Morgan.
Yes. We made a few changes to the agenda. Those are all reflected on the new one that we received last night. Is that correct? Ms. Gill?
That is correct.
And nothing else. Very good. The next meeting of the commission will be December 13th at 9 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Public comment. Anyone wish to speak? If not, surprising. We'll move on. Town manager's report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Excuse me.
Does that mean that the public can speak later?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Okay. On items of public commission action. But usually we have some.
Sure, it was clear. Okay, thank you, Mayor. With the utility undergrounding, I do have Mr. Rosa here today from Comcast. Give us a little update.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for letting us come back up for an update. Last time we were here, we were talking about getting the drops buried. When we started to proceed with the drops, we found out that there's probably 2/3 of the homes out here have what they call grinders for the septic tanks.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're diligently working with your water department and your sewer department to make sure that we don't penetrate any of those so it doesn't cause anybody a problem in the future. Because it was brought to our attention that the previous company that put the pipe in did about $17,000 worth of damage to some of those grinders. So we've been working diligently with your team and my contractors have been working with them. We've got probably the western section ready to go, and we're going to turn contractors loose in here once all of the utilities have been located. And you guys have been fantastic working with us, so we're a little bit behind where I'd like to be, but we're still moving forward. Gating process. Any questions?
Deadline. What are the dates? What are we talking here?
This is
Moving forward, I mean, into the next century? Or when do you see
Now,
completion?
you had given estimated times last month.
Yeah,
You could just-
last time I was here,
We
they
normally
gave us-
don't have this many people here, so
Right.
it would be a nice time to.
Okay, Comcast has put in a new system. For those of you who are presently Comcast subscribers, we put in a fiber optic system. So what it is we're now in the process of installing all of the house boxes and pipes. These will be installed on the side of your house. Inside of here is a optical receiver that takes the fiber optic light and changes it to RF. This is individual. It's not tied into anybody else's house. This is only feeds your house. So it's a new state-of-the-art system that Comcast has come up with, and they've made an agreement with the city to do phase 1 in here. So that's what it's for. A lot of you who are how many are Comcast subscribers right now? Okay, you will end up having this box and they'll be trenching across your front yard, about 18 inches deep. We're gonna be putting the pipe.
And that's hand trenching.
Yes, hand trenching, we're not using any equipment, we're hand trenching, unless we have to do a driveway bore. Then what we'll do is we'll use a missile in order to do that. For those of you who weren't here, we've been working on this process for over a year, maybe a year and a half. The system's already in place and running up. It's been optimized, it's running perfect. The other thing we need to do now is take the 99 subscribers that we have right now and get them hooked up to the system. That's why we're moving along slowly. We want to make sure we do no damage to anybody's sewer system or anybody's grinders. That's why it's taken us a little bit longer than what I'd like. That's why I've come here to explain everything to everybody. Any questions?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
You brought a truck in to lay a line from my property over to the Little Club and cracked my front sidewalk. And I just wonder, you know, who's gonna pay to repair that? I didn't bury it, I had to call and complain, you just let it lay across my swimming pool.
That
across my
could have been
backyard.
maintenance, that wouldn't have been construction, because we've been putting it in the ground.
It was not in the ground, I got it in the ground, but.
Right, okay, well, that's a maintenance issue, that's not a construction issue. Because all my guys, I'm just being truthful
Yeah,
with you.
I
You're
get
telling
it.
me somebody laid something across your driveway? My guys would not lay that across your driveway.
Well, I don't know who else your guys are, but I.
It would be Comcast, it would be Comcast in general, but not my department,
Okay.
okay? So, if you want, you could call up and complain about that to
Do you
the
have a
main,
phone number for me?
the 1-800 Comcast is the only number I have.
We can get to those numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
How many homes have been connected to date?
Right now, because of what we heard, what happened with it, we have, how many we have slated to start next week?
Well, we have 4 contractors that are ready to come in Monday. I'm gonna be going by and working with the sewer department and the water department. I'm gonna double check and make sure we have paint on the ground that identifies the different utilities. And as long as we're where we believe we are, we'll have most likely 3 to 4 contractors starting Monday.
Yeah, so we'll be
Where
moving.
will they be so that the residents can anticipate seeing some trucks?
Mostly in the section.
East, we're starting to the west, I'm sorry, and working our way towards Ocean. Mainly off of Polo, we're starting, depending on as the locates are done, like I said, I'm gonna be driving out those individual addresses and just making sure that,
All right, so the plan is to begin connecting to the individual homes next week? And
Yes.
And that should continue for what period of time until you expect conclusion?
well, we're gonna run into some obstacles. We haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, but I know some of the homes are larger here, the homes on Ocean, we're gonna run into issues. To be honest with you, I wasn't at the last meeting. I know there was some talk when I spoke with Greg of 6 weeks. That would be very comfortable.
Okay.
We're looking, like I said, once we get in here and
Yeah, we're not holding you to it,
Sure.
just want to have a
Yeah,
general
yeah.
idea. Comcast, by the way, has been very good. They have come here, they come to our meetings, they update us. These types of construction events run into all sorts of issues. They're in front of that, so, you know, we're pleased with what you've done so far.
if I also might add, I believe me and Greg touched on this in a meeting that I had with him. But daily, any kind of issues that a homeowner might have from work that's caused, I was gonna be coming to the office and getting any kind of complaints daily, addressing them, real time. I figured I'd just put that out there as well.
And they've been good about responding.
All right, very good.
Okay, anything else?
No?
Yes.
Unless there's another
Yes, sir.
About 1,000 years ago,
That was
at the
before my
beginning of
time.
this project, my home was connected incorrectly. They mixed up the wires and connected the next door neighbor to my wire and mine to his. He dropped Comcast completely,
Yes.
but I still have the original wire that's just sitting on the ground going.
I'm well aware of a lot of the cables that are on the ground.
Okay.
These cables will not be on the ground. They
I
will be in a
understand that,
pipe.
I understand that, but I was in phase 1 of the project, because I live on the south end of the town. And every meeting I come to, they say, take care of you, we'll take care of you, we'll take care of you soon. This is the first I've heard about this new box.
Okay, well, let me back up. Phase one was not fiber to the press.
I understand that.
That was an old coax plant that they made a
I
decision 5
understand
years
that.
ago.
And you are leading to my question, which is, will I get, when you finally finish what you started 5 years ago, will I get the new system or the old system? You still haven't finished laying the wire for the old system.
What do you mean by laying a wire for the old system?
There is a wire that goes from the street, along a wall, up into my house. and-
Okay, that's a drop issue. When I do construction, I have nothing to do with the drops. The only time I have something to do with the drops, let me just finish.
Okay,
The only time I have something to do with the drops is in this particular case where I'm putting drops, fiber optic drops in so they don't get cut. Okay? If you want, you could give your name and address to Greg. Greg will get it
they've
to
had
me.
my name and address for
Okay,
5 years.
I've never met you before, this is my first time.
I understand
I'm
that.
gonna get whatever issue you have,
Okay.
please send it to Greg, and I will make sure it gets taken care of.
Here we go again.
I mean, yeah,
I'll guarantee you, I'll give you my word, I'll guarantee you, in front of all these people, I'll get your problem fixed.
Thank you.
yeah.
Greg, just make sure I
We
get
have talked about it before,
Just make sure I get it. Anything else?
We're good?
Okay, thank you. You
Thank
guys
you
look
very
nice. If I don't see you, have a nice Thanksgiving.
Okay.
okay, so, then we have, AT&T, and so you've seen AT&T trucks all through the core and out here on A1A. They ended up having to hand dig the bore through our 10-foot easement behind Mr. Lyons' house. And so they've gotten to Banyan Street, and the groundwater is so high, they're gonna have to cut the street to finish that, so they're still working on that. And then they've got two, lines that, where they can't find the conduit that go under A1A, and so I've connected them with Wilco, who is the contractor that has as-built for the conduit. And so, but they don't have to go in and hand dig anything to connect the houses. They, you know, once they're done with this conduit, and splicing, then they can start transferring without having to go hand dig.
Okay, so that's the difference.
That's true. So, as it turned out, and to finish your question, we were looking at sometime, if everybody recalls, around February or March, to start taking the old service down.
Right, and for those of you who don't know, FP&L has already done the undergrounding, connections have been made, so we have power underground. They will not remove the poles and the upper lines until the other utilities are finished, and that's Comcast and AT&T, who are, as you just heard, working on that completion. As soon as that's done, then FP&L will come out, remove the poles.
Yeah, and some of those poles are actually AT&T, so they both will be out here taking down the old service.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move on now to the Plaza Soleil streetlight update.
Yes, so I've been in touch with Mr. White, and we're gonna be meeting with FP&L next week. Probably Mr. Snavely will be with us, and we'll be actually just discussing the best way to test some of the wattages, whether we go ahead and put in, start the process for ordering all the poles. But we would like to test the two different wattages of bulbs, and so we're gonna be discussing really exactly how to do that, the best way to do that next week, right? And then set in motion the ordering of all the poles.
Okay, and then what's the estimated time?
Well, the lead time for the poles is I think they said in one of our meetings, 13 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
and then installation is getting on the schedule to have
Yes.
that done.
right.
All right, so it's still up, a little bit up in the air, but it's moving forward.
Oh, yes, so, okay.
Any questions on Plaza Soleil? All right, CIP water main update.
I met with Baxter Woodman. We had the 75% completion meeting with them on the design. And I do have Rebecca Travis here, somewhere in this crowd, with Baxter Woodman. She might just kind of remind us of the schedule. We are on schedule, Ms. Travis, if you don't mind just reminding us kind of where we're at in that schedule.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Rebecca.
As Greg mentioned, we had the 75% design plans review meeting this last week. We have received comments from the town, and we're proceeding with the 100% design plans, cost estimate, and that is due to the town on December 4th. And then we are also coordinating, and we also will have some people out in the field this week and next week. Terracon will be doing some borings. They'll be in the street, and then they'll patch up any kind of hole that they make in the street. That'll be this week and next week. They'll be done with that. We also have been coordinating with the town's arborist regarding mitigating impacts to the Australian pines on A1A when the water main's being installed. However, right now we're in the design phase. As I said, 100% is due in early December. Then we would go to approximately 2-month bidding time frame for construction contract. And so that would be if the town awarded immediately after receiving the bids. Probably take another maybe month to get the contractor started. So we're looking at February, March for start of construction for the water main.
I mean, we have to do bid or contract negotiations once, we award a bid.
Right.
So
I suspect it'd be a little later than that, but,
yeah, I mean, I would be a little more conservative about that, maybe.
that's okay. It's gotta be done right.
But we're on schedule and things are, working really good together. And I think everything, we're done with the arborist. I mean, we've got that all, the placement and the alignment all worked out, right?
Yes, we've been coordinating with the arborist to directional drill installation of the water main so that we go underneath the root system. And so the trees won't be harmed. We might have to do some minor root pruning at the directional drill pits, but nothing that's going to impact the trees. And then also, when we are in construction, we'll have him on a retainer, so to speak, so if anything comes up that we need to get with him,
It's the same arborist that we're using.
Right.
So.
For those of you who don't, you probably are familiar, but with respect to the water main coming up A1A that will be improving, there was concern about the impact that it would have on our Australian pines, which are of such importance to our town. So an arborist was brought in, working closely with Rebecca to guide and direct the installation of the pipeline to avoid damaging those trees. Any other questions for?
Thank you, Rebecca. She'll be back later in the agenda.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, ARPV meeting is November 21st at 8:30 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Let's move back to Mr. Dunham on the Finance Director's report.
Yes, Mayor, I would just ask Rebecca to kind of explain what every year our balance sheet looks like at this point in time and really the reason why it might look odd.
As October is the first month of the fiscal year, it typically looks a little anemic for the revenues. And the reason being is that there is a delay from the distributions from the state and other entities that disperse their revenues that they collect the prior month. So we'll be wrapping up fiscal year 2019 as of November 30th. I'll cut off and say anything after that day is going to have to be allocated to this one. So I don't want you to be concerned that it looks like we are not receiving any revenues in the month of October. they're all being allocated back to September. So we're in a really good position right now, as far, you can check the bank statements the bank balances in at the very beginning of the financial statements on the balance sheet. We're in a very good position right now. We ended fiscal year 19 in a good position. So that puts us in a better place to go move forward with the CIP plan.
Rebecca, for the public, why don't you state what that number is, because it's an important number, our cash reserves.
Currently, our total assets are at $6,336,200. That's pre-audit. There are some allocations that we have to do liabilities that will affect that number, but not significantly. So we do have a pending legal settlement that needs to be accounted for, but that won't, it'll still be well over $6 million, our fund balance. For the general fund. The water fund is
You mean
close
the
to.
fund balance, not the total assets.
Right, the fund balance. The total water fund is just under $4 million, which is really good for us. But like I said, we do have to, that's pre-audit numbers. We do have to make some adjustments just to account for liability, things like OPEB, other things that just governments have to do, account for our liabilities. That will reduce that number, but not significantly. We're in a very good place right now, financially.
In the highlight, though, we need that substantial cash reserve for the anticipated expenses for the CIP.
Oh, yes, we
Right?
definitely need
So we're gonna be
it,
spending that
yes.
money, we're not gonna issue a dividend, right?
No, my goal is for the town to not assume significant debt through the CIP plan, and we are in a very good position to be able to do that.
Just do go down slightly. That's true.
Yes, it is significantly, by the end of this current fiscal year, it's gonna be significantly reduced, so.
And I will say that our auditors have already started working on our newest audit.
Yes, they've already
And
completed the first phase.
he's been working in Rebecca's area back there, and he has made many very positive comments about what he sees.
So,
Very good.
our auditors love us, I don't know what to.
Any questions?
Is that why, Rebecca, is that why we have a net deficit of like $352,500, but no monies have been collected?
No monies have been collected for this current fiscal. I have not received my first ad valorem distribution. That's our bulk of our revenues for us. So I haven't received our first ad valorem revenue distribution for this current fiscal year. Once I do get that, the numbers will swing drastically in the other direction. But we certainly have enough money in the bank right now to be able to carry us through until that money does come in from the taxes.
This is typical of every year.
It is so
Yes.
difficult. Every place.
Every year.
All right, any other questions? No, thank you very much. Chief, police report.
I requested the report, accepted as submitted.
Questions of Chief? If not, we'll accept your report as submitted. All right, let's move on to items for commission action, and let's get to the declaration of use agreement.
Mr. Mayor, I have a voting conflict, so I'm gonna step down on the board of the Little Club, so I'm gonna go eat dinner.
Okay. You have submitted your
Right there.
request.
Yeah, very good.
Two donuts. Yeah, can you bring us a few back? Let me just begin by saying that I think it is truly remarkable that we had such a large turnout of interested residents and other people who may be impacted by the decisions on this pickleball court. It's really representative of what is truly unique about the town of Gulfstream and other small municipalities. Small, easily accessible home rule where people can come and voice their concern, and they are heard by the representatives. So if you just look around, you really see democracy in action. Turning to this declaration of use agreement, the Architectural Review and Planning Board, after several hearings, approved the application by the Little Club for 2 pickleball courts. This was done over a period of months, several meetings, and with considerable effort by the town manager and staff to bring parties together, to voice concerns and to try to address the concerns. subject to conditions of use. And that is what is brought before the commission here. We are to review those conditions of use, which are limited. It's limited to the time of play and the equipment to be used in play. And we are to either accept those conditions, modify those conditions, or reject those conditions. And before even talking about it and getting input, I want to say that the commission here must be cognizant of the need to balance the right and expectations of neighbors in Hillside along County Road, in the Casitas, and our neighbors to the north at St. Andrew's Club, their interest in quiet use and enjoyment of their property versus the Little Club, zoned recreational, and their right to implement recreational activity on their property. That being said, I have to say that the Little Club has made tremendous efforts, I believe, from my research, made every effort that they can to reduce the noise impact from these proposed two pickleball courts. They're going to use as part of this declaration of use agreement cushion balls, what are called quiet cushion paddles, a surface to the court that is sound reducing apparently, acoustic fencing around the courts to reduce the noise impact, and then landscaping to improve the aesthetic appearance of those courts. They've relocated the courts to minimize the sound. So they've done quite a bit, and I think they also are our resident and our neighbor, and I compliment them for what they did. But all that being said, my recommendation, because all we have is this commission, my recommendation to the commission is that we table this action for a month. And in that month, be provided with a packet from staff presenting details on the ball cushion, on the quiet paddle, on the nature and location of the court, the acoustic fencing. And there was a report by a sound expert from the Little Club that I believe we should review. In addition to that, I believe that because this is a matter of such importance, and it's something that I think we want the town to recognize, we know it's important. This is one of those things that I'm not at least comfortable with the notion that the only way to tell whether the noise from the pickleball court is offensive or not is to put it in place and play it. I'm not comfortable with that approach to this. And noise is one of those features that is variable and ill-defined and not easily quantifiable. So I recommend that the town retain a sound engineer, independent, with absolutely no recommendation one way or the other to his or her review of the situation. Review all the information that's been provided, visit the site, and report back to the commission with observations and comments so that we can make an informed decision on this declaration of use. And with that, I turn it over to the other commissioners for comment.
I have some comments. As most of you know, may not know, commissioners are not allowed to talk about a subject that will be or could be presented in a public meeting. So I had no idea what the mayor was going to say. So I may end up repeating some of what he said. I hope that's okay.
That's one of the problems with the sunshine law, but that's
because I think I absolutely agree with the mayor's direction. I also agree that the Little Club has taken many steps to dampen the noise, to hide the courts with landscaping. But to me, the elephant in the room continues to be the same issue. Is that noise going to be a nuisance? Will it violate, let me put it differently, the code specifically states that any proposed site, structure, etc., protection of property values, all elements of the proposed plan shall be designed and arranged to have a minimal negative impact on the property values of adjoining properties. I saw all the videos. I think there's a gentleman out there who cited as a real estate person, he thinks the values go down. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that's something that we, the commission, ARB, have to really consider. I think they, I think it's been an effort to consider it, but I don't think they've had enough data to really determine. Going back to the mayor's suggestion, we need to get some input from experts. Protection of use and equipment. All elements of the proposed plan shall be designed and arranged to have a minimal, sorry for my diction, negative impact on the use and enjoyment of adjoining properties. And then when it talks about tennis courts, and by the way, I don't think pickleball and tennis courts are the same thing, but conceptually, it states that no tennis courts, in this case, let's say no pickleball courts, shall be located, designed, operated, or maintained to interfere unduly with the enjoyment of the property rights by the owners of the properties adjoining the tennis court. So I think all those are requirements that are placed on the various governing bodies in the town. And I'm not sure we've been able to answer those two questions in the absence of having the kind of report that you're talking about. To me, though, the devil is in the detail. I've gone in selling businesses where there's been some dispute. The buyer comes in with one number, the seller comes in with another number with different appraisals, and you have all, so we're gonna have to be very careful in how we exercise the process you recommended in picking the right kind of expert. And by the way, I don't have any bright insights, but at the end of the day, we have to balance the two interests, the interests of the club and the adjoining neighbors. Now, I will say that when I look at balancing it, someone who is living in a facility 24/7 versus members of club that go in and out all the time, I mean, we have to look at the relative differences in terms of its impact if we were not to approve it for the club versus the people who live in the joint. That's my perspective, right or wrong. So yes, I vote in favor of what you're suggesting.
I agree. I think we should hire an independent person. And I'd like to become more knowledgeable about, I mean, this was supposed to be, you all were gonna work together, the residents and the club, correct? I mean, I think pickleball is good for the club, and I don't know if it's good for the residents, but somehow I think they have to work together. But I think a start is to get an independent on the noise.
I played a lot of tennis, I've never played pickleball, but I was thinking just like with generators, you get a decibel rating for the generators, from home to home, that's probably a good idea, the same, so we have some hard facts to make a judgment on. I really don't know how you make a judgment on it without knowing.
Could you speak up, please? We can't hear you. Could you speak up? Please.
I said I think just like we have generators, decibel ratings on generators in the code, so that they have to meet a certain standard in order to be installed next to homes, that the mayor's suggestion about getting professionals in to do something that they can rate it is also a good idea, because we need some facts to make a decision.
Is there somebody here, maybe Copy, or can explain to have you all worked with the Little Club on all this? I mean, I'm a little out.
I'm not involved in that, but I just have a question to ask about it, because I'm not involved in the issue. I live on the other side, I've got other issues about kitchens and garbage cans and things, because I live on Little Club Road on the west side of the Little Club, and, but I have a question about the tennis courts. Were the tennis courts not in place before Hillside was built? The St. Andrews tennis courts, aren't there 4 or 5 of them? Don't they have lights? 3? I mean, how's the noise? Would the residents be happier if these were tennis courts and not, I mean, clearly, Hillside House has lived happily next to 3 tennis courts, and their property values have increased.
But they're elevated tennis courts above our parking lot.
Oh, I mean, I
So it's
don't
not-
know, I'm just,
I'm just answering your
yes,
your
thank you, I
question.
just wondered if the
Yeah.
noise was a factor.
No, and it's a different ball, it's a different game, I think.
Okay, I think, I would like to just have Mr. Dunham explain what happened in the town's efforts to answer Joan's question. And then I'm gonna open this up, okay? So we're gonna have an opportunity to speak in the context of what we're doing here.
Sure, okay, so, just kind of a summary of the meetings we had. This actually all started back in July. The Little Club came to the ARPP meeting at that time and made a presentation for this. After that presentation, the ARPB deferred this to the September meeting and requested that the Little Club do a sound study. We don't have a meeting in August, so again, that was the direction that the ARPB provided to the staff and to really the Little Club, and that was to address all of the noise concerns that we had at that meeting. We didn't have a crowd this big, but we did get a lot of email responses, voicing their concern about the noise. So therefore, they directed them to do a noise analysis. And so we came back at the September meeting, and in which case they did have a noise analysis that was done. The company that did the analysis was not at the meeting, but to summarize, by the end of that meeting, the board members, basically the majority of them, what they directed the Little Club and the staff to do was to, one, try to have a meeting that would be kind of mediated by the staff and of the Little Club and all of the mainly the Hillside House at St. Andrews to participate in that meeting. Not a public meeting, we didn't make any recordings of it, and it was a 2.5-hour meeting. I think everybody thought that exercise went very well. We got positive comments back from people at Hillside and St. Andrews, so there were conditions that were talked about during that meeting, and I know Mr. Nazaro, taking copious notes during the meeting, then recited those back at the end of the meeting so that we all were on the same page. And so we took that back to the October meeting in the form of a declaration of use agreement that included all of the items that were discussed in our mediation meeting and then recited by Mr. Nazaro. Now, some of those issues became, a condition of the approval of the use agreement. But some of those discussions that we talked about then became a part of the application itself. And an example is the applicant, the Little Club, added 5 shade trees to the amount that they originally had. So those became conditions. That was a part of the application. So all of those conditions were addressed either in the application itself or as a condition of approval. And so that meeting was, I guess, in October, and then we met again at the ARPB with this declaration of use agreement, in which case the ARP approved it with the conditions that were developed during our mediation meeting, for lack of a better way to describe that meeting. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's no more comments from the commission,
No, I'd love to hear
we can
that.
open it up now to public comment. Yes, sir.
Could we have them come to the?
Yeah, that'd be preferable, because we have a lot of people. If you're gonna speak, please come to the podium so you can speak into the microphone.
And stay in.
Just state your name and address, please.
It gets harder and harder to go to. I have a long set of comments here, but a few
Just
were troubling items.
State your name and address
Oh,
for the
sorry.
record.
Yes, sir. My name is Tom Cutler, and I'm a resident of Hillside House. I'm the secretary of the board there, and I'm here with the president over there, Sophie. The three of us are sort of the people who have been at least on the phone, if not in the meetings, but Sophie Bent has been in all of the meetings, and only as the process continued did we realize that we had to get there. So two of us, Mr. Crimmins from St. Andrews and I were on a telephone call. Anyway, we've had a variety of problems, and one of Mr. Dunn's comments is fair. We did make progress, no question. We had a working meeting. We did make progress, but Mr. Crimmins and I both said loud and clear, we cannot agree to anything until we go back and talk to our residents. And 3 days later, we got from Mr. Dunn I've forgotten what it was called, like a memorandum of understanding or whatever. And in sort of major letters, one of the major headings was final agreement of provisions of something or other. And both Mr. Crimmins and I, independently of each other, this is the night before the important meeting here, said, wait a second, we did not agree that this was anything final about it. We didn't think this was we'd talk some more about it, and we'd go back to our residents and so forth and come back. So that was upsetting. And just quickly, Mr. Stanley recused himself. I believe, I couldn't quite hear, but none of the 5 people of the APRB recused themselves. We had 3 out of 5 people, I think, had a conflict of interest, at least in my view, being representatives and members of the Little Club. So here they are. We also, just a couple of minor things. One, when Mr. Roach got up to make a proposal, he had a proposal already written by the time. Sorry, I gotta go back. Mr. Kearns was able to get to the meeting on Friday. We called in, a couple of us called in, and I could not get through. I called over and over and over again on the Friday morning because I was very upset by what I just said, that this final agreement business. And either the line was disconnected or whatever. We had 3 days earlier, a good conference call, and then all of a sudden we can't get on. And all of a sudden my doubting Thomas nature kicked in, and I didn't know whether that was a mistake or whether it's on purpose or whatever. But anyway, at the meeting, Mr. Roach got up to make a proposal, and he sort of started talking. I'd like to propose, and I read the, I forgot what he called it, but anyway, the list of items. And he said, oh, but by the way, I have to, first we need a proposal to get approval for taking down a big tree out in where we propose to put the pickleball courts. And that tree had already been taken down. That tree was taken down in June, I think. And I'm getting, wait a minute, you know, like, so a whole series of sort of semi-troubling things are on my mind, and I think in a lot of our minds. So I'll leave you with that. I could go on, I'm pretty verbose when I want to be, but anyway, that'll give you a flavor where I am.
Excuse me, Tom, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Is the most of the concern about the noise, or,
well, two kinds of noise, obviously the ball and the paddle, and that is improved, I think, by the softer ball.
okay,
But no one has done any kind of study, put the two together. I don't know how many of you have played pickleball or have been down to the court over here. You have to go and sort of listen to it. It's a major factor.
I have listened, and I've asked tennis pros that very question.
But we don't even know whether-
Unquestionably, it's louder.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, whether the efforts to dampen the sound has achieved the standard of the town, I don't know, and that's the deal.
Well,
so if we do an independent study on sound, like, we all thought would be good, that would take care of some of these issues?
well, there aren't a lot of experts floating around who are experts on pickleball noise. It is an issue that's very contentious. And some of us can talk about people fights and lawsuits and all of this kind of thing. And there's anyway. But I'm not sure that you're gonna find, we have an expert, the guy who wrote the one major article saying why your neighbors don't like you if you're playing pickleball or something. It's a 5-page article. We gave it out here. Sophie, I think, brought it to one of your meetings, or maybe it was the
first meeting that we had.
Right.
Our sound experts that sound with generators, we've done that, dealt with it, decibels and.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, I think,
Incomprehensible.
yes,
Yeah, but anyway.
Well, that's the idea, is to try to.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
well, I think it's a good idea.
Canvas this issue.
Yeah.
If I can just address one thing on the recusal.
Yeah.
Mr. Stanley is a board member at the Little Club, so he's
Right.
required to recuse. I'm a member of the Little Club, and I believe some of the ARPB members are as well, but we're just members, and we're not allowed by law to recuse unless we cannot recuse ourselves from these decisions unless you happen to sit on a board.
Okay.
So,
So 3 out of 5.
there's nothing nefarious there.
Yeah, okay.
And I can assure you that their decisions, and I know my decision, as I think is evident today, is not one guided by allegiance to one thing or the other.
Oh, I think you're right. I think it's a good one, but I have to say, we do have someone who wrote the book. One of the people who wrote the book, and we'd like to use him. Either you could use him, or would like to have him enter into the record whatever he comes up with as far as.
Absolutely. If you want to provide that information, that's the whole point, is what we're uncomfortable with. If I can just kind of get in the weeds here, but this application was a level 2. It only goes to the ARPB. It didn't come to the commission. It's below the level of commission action. The only reason it's here is because they put essentially contractual deed issues on the agreement. And so that raises the level to us. So just out of full transparency, and Mr. Nazari, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the options were you could appeal the ARPB decision to the commission sitting as a board of adjustment, or this is brought up to the commission and we address the declarations of use. And that's what I tried to explain today. It seems to me that this decision can be made via the declarations of use by opening it up to the evidence that was given to the ARPB, that you may have additional information. We want to get as much information as possible so that we can rule on this. So, but the options are really up to you.
There's other people that need to speak up.
I think a lot of people have, yeah, come on, Caroline. And we just, a few of us.
Absolutely. Please.
My name is Carolyn Smith, and I'm a resident of Fairways 2 at St. Andrews. And I would like to speak to the sound study that was conducted by the Little Club and to some information that we have in addition to that. So the sound study conducted by the Little Club was conducted by Advanced Industrial Hygiene Services, and the report was provided by a gentleman named Bruce Marche, who is a certified industrial hygienist. This is in the Little Club application process. And so we would like to speak about the impact of pickleball on the neighbors. And I first of all want to note that in the October 17th minutes of the ARPB meeting, Chairman Smith on September 16th stated, "The board would like," I quote, "to have the sound engineer present at the next meeting to explain the acoustics." But we have noted at the October 24th meeting, a vote of 4-1 was taken, even without this individual in attendance as requested by Chairman Smith. So, secondly, I would like to read for you an overview of the November 4th Fairways 2 consultation with Dr. Lance Willis, Principal Acoustical Engineer at Spendiarian and Willis, and I'll read this to you. On November 4th, several residents of St. Andrews Fairways 2 condominium consulted with Dr. Lance Willis. Based in Tucson, Arizona, Spendiarian and Willis provide professional consulting services concentrating on architectural and environmental acoustics and noise control. Dr. Willis holds a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and a PhD with multidisciplinary certificate in acoustics from the Georgia Institute of Technology. Dr. Willis and his firm have particular expertise with pickleball facilities, having planned and mitigated many sites in Arizona and elsewhere in the United States. Dr. Willis reviewed the Little Club site and sound mitigation proposal in advance of the 1-hour consultation which we had with him. He made the following points and observations. Based on their experience working with pickleball facilities, Willis stated that courts located within 350 feet of residential structures often require abatement. Courts located within 150 feet require very careful abatement to avoid complaints. They recommend that pickleball courts to be located within 500 to 600 feet of residential properties or other noise-sensitive areas be reviewed by an acoustical engineer during the site selection phase in order to avoid choosing a site that is expensive to mitigate, results in unexpected limitations on court use, or leads to ongoing disputes with neighbors. And as an aside, I would note that the estimated distance from Hillside to these courts is 75 feet, and from Fairways to condominiums, it is 175 feet. Dr. Willis stated, properly measuring sound from pickleball courts is not simply a matter of setting up a sound level meter and measuring sound pressure levels. Pickleball produces a highly impulsive sound with short duration impulses that require a detailed process that can accurately represent the community noise impact of pickleball courts. And I stress the community impact of pickleball courts because I don't think you will see that in the study provided by Advanced Industrial Hygiene Services. An abatement plan should be prepared by an acoustical engineer with experience in assessing the community impact. He refers, the Acoustiblock screens proposed by the Little Club are ill-suited for pickleball mitigation, as Acoustiblock is not a sound absorption material. Rather, it reflects sound and bounces it in different ways. Acoustiblock is not a wall, it is a material that attaches to fencing and can bring the fencing down in high wind conditions. There are other materials available in permanent wall solutions that are far more effective than Acoustiblock. In the Insight Studio study that the Little Club prepared, they indicated in terms of Acoustiblock that it is expected to result in at least 50% reduction to the sound experienced by nearby homeowners. And Dr. Willis has said there is no scientific basis for that kind of terminology. While hedging plants may provide visual relief, they offer no sound mitigation qualities. The cushioned court surface proposed by the Little Club will provide no sound mitigation whatsoever, as the noise from pickleball is overwhelmingly generated from the ball being struck by a stiff, rigid paddle, not from the ball bouncing on the court surface. Dr. Willis has seen no data to suggest the sniper quiet paddle recommended by the Little Club will provide any significant noise reduction. He believes that since it is still equally stiff and rigid, the paddle is unlikely to reduce noise to any large degree. It is possible that the Gamma Foam quiet ball recommended by the Little Club could reduce noise, but this is a new product for which there is no reliable data to date. Dr. Willis reports that he's going to be traveling to a site to do a study in the coming weeks, but to date it is untested. Dr. Willis also noted that the overwhelming majority of pickleball players across the country want to play the game with regulation equipment and express no interest in playing the game with modified equipment, such as that being proposed by the Little Club. Finally, while not wanting to cast aspersion on the Little Club sound consultant, he expressed his confusion with the sound level data in the report, noting that the data showed very little differences in the equipment categories and did not seem to support their case. So as Fairway 2 homeowners and Hillside homeowners who are even closer than we are, we respectfully request that a proper sound study, as you are recommending, be performed by a qualified acoustical engineer with experience and expertise with pickleball facilities to determine appropriate court location and the impact on adjacent neighbors. Thank you very much. Questions? Questions? Hopefully not. Thank you.
You said it all. Thank you.
And that's been provided to the town, correct, that report? What you just read?
No, I didn't do that.
Yes,
You mean what I just said?
what you just read, yes.
I will provide that.
Thank you.
I can't do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing us to express our thoughts on this subject. My name is John Gallagher, and I live in the Hillside House Apartments. And I just came down yesterday, so I don't have what Mr. Dunham referred to as the agreement between the parties, but I know that there was some monetary penalties that would be imposed on infractions or violations. And I just thought, where's the burden? Does that burden rest with us? Are we supposed to call the police? How do we express that? I don't know if that was in the document because I haven't seen it, but that was just a question I had for you.
Typically, people that are aggrieved by, a nuisance will usually call the town. Maybe they might call the Little Club, but typically they will call the town or the police department separately, and then we would have to go and gather the evidence from the Little Club. The way this was developed, it's provided the Little Club an opportunity and an incentive to self-enforce, and by the amounts in there, and then a limit of the number of notice violations or complaints in a one-year period of time. I believe the 6th notice, and all these complaints ultimately go back to the ARPB. And so on the 6th complaint, they have the authority to actually rescind, the permit to play pickleball after 5 complaints on the 6th. But to answer your question, typically they'll call the town or the Little Club themselves.
Okay.
But so, police are not parked out there by
No, I understand.
all day,
Yeah.
and so any kind of a nuisance, it's usually generated by a call, from a resident, and then we respond to that.
Thank you. I want to also acknowledge the Little Club's efforts to mitigate this whole noise issue. I live right on the southwest corner of Hillside House, so the new location is closer to me. I think the location needs to be revisited, just as a homeowner. I haven't been able to speak to anybody on the architectural board because I was unable to make it to the meetings. I traveled for work and I just couldn't get here. But I did go out to Calusa Park with my wife Cynthia yesterday. I don't know if you've ever gone out there. There are 2 pickleball courts out there, and it was in the middle of, it's a huge park, much bigger than the Little Club's golf course. and it's in the middle, almost adjacent to the, I think it's Route 1, Cynthia? And you could hear it, but it's in the middle of a park. And I just want to stress what Mr. Lyons referenced about the unduly burdensome aspects of this sport, pickleball, on our living in Hillside House. I think aside from just ruining our outside existence, and maybe I don't even know if it's going to penetrate the windows and the walls, but it's just going to be difficult for us to realize the value in our properties. There's a devaluation component here as well that I'm concerned about. And you know, you as a commission of the last right, you're the only group that we can go to and speak to about this. So thank you for.
I have a question.
Well, I want to thank you for agreeing to have a proper acoustical study done.
Well, thank you. You want to do what's best to come to the right solution, however that can be achieved. But I have a question. And you're probably the perfect home for it, because you live right next to the Little Club, overlooking a fair amount of activity for golf. The golf storage area is there, the carts are there, the pro shop is near, and the driving range is very close. What impact does that have on you?
Minimal. It's minimal. But you should go to Calusa Park and stand next to the courts or stand 60 feet away, and it's just different. It's loud.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's a very different, it's peaceful. We have a peaceful, you know, highly dense, concentrated residential area, and you don't really hear people putting or they tee off, you know, 100 yards away. You don't hear that on our porch.
Or the driving range?
Driving range, they hit out that way, so no, you don't. I mean, you hear the ball when you're out on a patio, but
Can you hear the tennis balls at the tennis court?
no. See, the Hillside House, it faces southwest.
Yeah.
So, the tennis court isn't really it's different because it's elevated. It's above our parking lot, so the front side of Hillside House doesn't interface. You know, we all look the other way, and all our porches and patios are facing southwest or south. So, I personally think it's a bad idea to put the courts there, but I have a vested interest in my home. You know, so,
Well, we appreciate your comments.
yeah, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Heinz Webb.
That'll be the day.
Rick Morris, from Fairways 2. I play a lot of pickleball in the summer at Crystal Downs. We put those courts in on 2 existing hard tennis courts, and immediately had significant complaints from homeowners that are adjacent and the players on the 16th tee. And our long-term solution is we will move the pickleball courts away from everything. We have land across the street from the driving range, and it'll be nowhere. So that's one comment. I question whether or not the game will be the same with the softballs. I've never played with them, but I'm assuming it'll be a different game. And last comment, I think Mrs. Smith made the right comment. If you're going to have somebody test it, I would have, with those softballs and the racket they're suggesting, 8 people playing a vigorous game. I can tell you it's a vigorous game. It's a lot of whack, whack, whack. It's very fast if you're not playing. You're from here to that door, that's how far they're away. So the ball's going back and forth. Boom, boom, boom all the time. I love it. It's a great game, but I guarantee you it's noisy. Thank you.
Just one question. You've never played with either the dampening paddle or the cushion ball?
No, you know, as somebody made a comment, we can send a guy to the moon, but we can't come up with a pickleball ball that is not very noisy.
Anecdotally, do you know anyone who has?
No, my son is up in Tacoma, and that's where it all started, and nobody plays with it up there, I can tell you that. I don't know where it stands, to be honest with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mike Genero, and I'm the owner of Unit 12 at the Hillside House, my wife and Virginia and myself. So we're new owners of the house there, and You know, before you made your comments, Mr. Mayor, about tabling the issue for a month, you know, I was gonna respectfully ask for time for the issues to be tabled and for hopefully a mutually beneficial deal to be cut between, you know, the objecting parties and the club. You know, I don't play pickleball, and I respect the Little Club's interest in getting into it, given its popularity and what it can do for the club. And it clearly has benefits for the members and for the Little Club community. But there are, you know, for every good thing, there is a cost, and clearly I think people are centering around the noise component, and I think that's mainly what we're talking about. And I think you're suggesting of tabling and having an acoustic engineer revisit noise and all that will go a long way to, you know, figuring out what a good solution will be. I'm not a town person, so I'm learning in this very first meeting how town law works and what was approved in the summer versus what's on the table today. And it sounds like there was an application that was approved, and now it's about conditions of use. And it seems like, you know, the ship has sailed with respect to the application, but conditions of use are on the table. You talked a little bit about the recent history of how things got modified and further improved before it was put forward for this approval today. And it sounds like things were implemented into the application because of, you know, it's not really conditions of use, but if you add a hedge, it has more to do with the application. I think listening to you offering time, I think is great. What went through my mind in hearing that was, you know, what's next? At the end of the month, we have this report, you know, what will be on the table with respect to making it palatable for everybody in the room. And it seems to me that we could find ourselves, you know, opening up the application, you know, more than necessarily just the conditions of use. And that could mean, you know, the whole spectrum of things could be you don't build a pickleball court at all at one extreme end of the spectrum. And the other extreme end of the spectrum would be it goes forward as is, as the application reads today. And then there's everything in between. But I would think that at the end of this acoustic study, that we could find ourselves really opening up the application more, because maybe the conclusion is that the location of the court, moving it to some other part of the real estate, would be the one that brings the noise down level the most and becomes the more palatable solution for certainly the people that have an objection to the court being built. So I just raised that as an issue. I think we all should probably think about, like, where will we be at the end of this acoustic study and how will we conclude this? And it seems like roads are going to kind of lead to the application, very, very well likely. Maybe not, but that I just put out there because I don't know how that works given, you know, the application was approved. But listen, you know, when we first heard about this, my wife and I, we had concerns. You know, again, I've never played the game, I've never seen the game played, but you know, you can go on YouTube, as my wife showed me, and you can see it being played on YouTube or whatever. But you know, as we read the town ordinances too, you know, they're written broadly for a reason, right? So we can work a deal out. That's why I think a lot of laws are written very generally. So both sides can have an argument for why it could be built and not built. Oh, having said that, when we read these provisions like 66-352 and 66-368, and I'm just making reference to the letter that we actually wrote, we thought that this would not square with those, you know, rules, and that it would not be able to be approved. So, but you know, we're here today, and the application went through, although it went through in the summertime, and no one's around, including us. I live in the Northeast, so I came down for this meeting because it's important, and I hope that we can get to something that works for everyone in the room and for the town. We understand, I understand at least, why it's important to the community. But I think the Little Club, one final point and I'll stop, has a lot of degrees of freedom. I mean, they're probably one of the largest landowners on this barrier island, I would think, you know. So, you know, what it can do and its flexibilities that it has around this court and where it's built and so forth, they have more degrees of freedom than just about any other party. So, and they will be the first, I think, pickleball operator, which is a great competitive advantage for them if they can work something out that works for everybody in this room. So I appreciate the few minutes that you've provided, and thanks for your work today.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, can I suggest that the first question you asked is, the end of the study by the town, this is my question, I think is probably your question, or was your question. And it's determined that, our expert determines that there is a real concern about it being a nuisance under the code. Well, the application's already been approved, so I don't understand what we do next.
It would be contingent on your approval of the declaration of use, so if that does not happen, then the application would not be.
So I just say, so if that report is negative on the noise, or not positive, how do I express it more distinctly? Noise is a problem, then I would just vote no on this.
That's right.
Okay.
Alternatively, they can appeal it for factual analysis by the commission, not for adjustment here.
Right, so the committee could appeal, yeah, exactly, so that's correct. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sophie Bent. I'll be very brief. I think everybody's heard everything I had to say. I was in all the few meetings that we've had. I've been here from the very first meeting and expressed my views. I live at Hillside House, apartment 7, and also have apartment 1. The original plan was 25 feet from my window. Now, the new plan is about 50 feet from my window, so it's kind of an improvement. But not much of an improvement. The original plan was a bad plan to start with. It's always been a bad plan to put a pickleball court or a racket club next to a residential unit that close to it, especially pickleball. It's my view anyway. There was a bad plan. We did mediation, and I appreciate the efforts of the town and the efforts of the little club to try to mitigate the noise issue, which is obviously our concern. But a bad plan is always a bad plan, no matter what you do. And although we did make some progress, it's not as bad of a plan, but it's still a bad plan in my view. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
My wife wants me to pass out some pictures too. I always do what she says.
Good morning, my name is Marilyn Benoit, and this is my husband Joe Benoit, and we are members of the Little Club for the last 14 years, and we're also living at St. Andrews. And I want to thank you all on the board for your great attention to democracy in action. That was great. We live basically just a stone's throw away from the proposed pickleball court. And I asked him to give those pictures, and the pictures are from our balcony. We're almost directly on top of the proposed pickleball court, so we're very interested in this. As I mentioned, we've been members of the Little Club for the last 14 years, and in those 14 years, we have never experienced any issue that the general manager or the board of the Little Club have proposed which would have such a negative and intrusive impact on their neighbors. Considering all of the Little Club's acres of property, it is astonishing to us that it proposes to situate the pickleball court next to and across from this most densely populated area, spot in the area, where about 100 residents live in 52 condominiums. They will be exposed to, we will be exposed to the constant, repetitive, and noisy sounds of pickleball throughout the day. I would say parenthetically, if you haven't played pickleball yourself or gone to it, you know, go online and just Google pickleball lawsuits noise, and you will be, you know, you'll fall over at, you know, what it is that people have found out about the playing of this game over the last 5 or 10 years, particularly in Florida and Arizona. There are lots and lots of things to see. The bylaws of the Little Club in this book provide many thoughtful rules about comportment, etiquette, and sound as they affect golf, fishing, dining, and even down to the use or not use of phones except in designated areas. Very, very conscientious with regard to those types of sounds. Yet the Little Club is now proposing to expose their closest neighbors to 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, of the repetitive hammer of the sound of pickleball pounding into 52 condominium backyards. Interestingly enough, and you may be aware of this fact, that 70% of the club members, as I have looked at this book, which is the 2018-19 book, since it's the last one that's available to me, you may be aware of the fact that 70% of the Little Club members are not residents of Gulfstream. And that the members, the 70% of the members come in from over 15 different towns and cities to the Little Club. Would you want a pickleball court in your backyard? No? We don't either. So we ask you to remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And stop this action to build a pickleball court right next to our homes. If it is to be relocated somewhere else on the property, great. But not in that densely populated area. Do not deprive 100 neighbors of the peaceful enjoyment of their homes throughout the day, every day of the week. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yeah. Sophie.
Want to say something?
Hi, I'm Sophie Ayers, and I'm going to cut way back on what I was going to say because I appreciate so much the sensible and thoughtful action you all have taken today. But my husband and I bought an apartment about a year and a half ago over at Fairways 2. And one of the reasons we bought here is because this community, and particularly the town of Gulfstream, is so well known for being welcoming and respectful and establishing, a living environment that is serene, with natural beauty and as I said, mutual respect. And so the first meeting that I was able to attend, because all of this stuff happened over the summer with pickleball, was the last ARPB meeting. And I was struck by thinking about the fact that we're all neighbors and friends here. At the St. Andrews Club, we have 30 Little Club members. We all have overlapping civic engagement, activities that we do together, and real friendships. And so what concerned me the most is that in this environment that we strive so hard to maintain, and what makes the Gulfstream community so special, is that we're going to be put in a position, potentially, under the current proposal, of kind of like ratting on our friends. And the choice for the Hillside residents will be, do they call the police and, say my buddy blah, blah, blah was making too much noise? Or do they live with an unacceptable amount of noise and that, kind of really impacts their enjoyment of their apartment and their home and their life? Or maybe they end up choosing to move, but what a sad outcome, that would be. And I think one of the things that concerned me most listening to the ARPB meeting was not just the specific violations that are outlined in the Declaration of Views, which I know we're obviously tabling today, but the question that Mr. Murphy asked at the meeting, which was, what if, despite the current proposed mitigation and the current proposed location, that despite the best efforts, the courts are just too noisy, and they are built, and they are in the ground, and they are just a nuisance and making everyone's life miserable. The ARPB was not able to provide a very comforting or, you know, legally, you know, comforting answer to that. And then I started thinking about, imagine the scenario where the courts have been built, the little clubs spent the money, and now residents are faced with potentially escalating the situation and making it extremely difficult for everybody as friends, as part of a community that we all really care about. So I just want to commend you all for hitting the pause button on this. I think it's really prudent. We've got at least 50 homeowners. We have 2 presidents who said they didn't even really agree to the use of declarations, the declaration of use, excuse me, when it was presented as something that we agreed to. And I know Larry Crimmins wrote a fantastic letter. I hope you've all read it. But I hope that this new sound study will also include, you know, much more input from all of us who will then now be in residence and able to participate, and that we really do think big picture. Is this the right location? Is this the right place? Is this the right time? I guess that's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
So, may I suggest,
Mr. Mayor?
you running the meeting, not me, but would you answer the question, what if it's determined later on and to be a nuisance? What happens?
Just because it would have been approved doesn't give it free rein to violate our existing codes. Specifically incorporated in the Declaration of Use is our ability to enforce our codes, so nuisance or any of those.
And I think in the meeting, you did answer, Murphy, that the town could enforce its code and therefore the ARPB could revoke, rescind the approval of use.
They could as part of the Declaration of Use, or it could be modified through the code enforcement mechanisms.
But what was not qualified was how one qualifies noise and nuisance. So again, it just
No,
puts.
you're right.
It just, you know, the code is the code, which is great it's there, but it's hard to,
It shifts the burden to us.
yes.
And that's the problem.
Yes. So,
Mr. Mayor, I am Roz Curtis. I am the president of Little Cup, and I'd just like to make a few comments if I could. First of all, the Little Club, as we've stated, I think from the beginning, wants to be good neighbors, which is why we took all the steps that we've known that were possible to take to try to mitigate any impact on the neighbors. So from our perspective, we're absolutely fine with an additional study, independent study, to determine if in fact the steps that we've taken would mitigate the impact and to what degree. So we're absolutely fine with that. I'd also like to just offer to you as evidence of our intent, after the ARPB meeting, the last one at which that board approved the site plan and the use agreement to go to you, I called John Gallagher, the president of Hillside House, and I told him that I had spoken to all of the members of my executive committee before making the call, and that since none of us could exactly know how the impact would be, and really until the courts was built, and perhaps maybe some other experts capable of it, but in my mind, I didn't think we would truly know until we had reached that point. I said to Mr. Gallagher, I said, look, if I stand in your terrace and we think that the noise is not neighborly, that the Little Club would be prepared, was prepared to take whatever additional steps we needed to take to mitigate the impact. So I only say that to all of the neighbors to say, we tried to do the right thing all the way along. And the ball is not an issue for us. We actually think for the average age of our members, the game will play very well. And in fact, because of noise issues, the pickleball game, if you will, nationally is moving probably in a direction that's closer to quieter usage. So we think, frankly, that the game's going to move that way, and we'll see more developments that will help the situation. But we're absolutely fine with the study because we want to be good neighbors. Hopefully that'll yield some more factual conclusions that people will be comfortable with, and we can go from there.
Well, yeah, I just want to say, Rodney, you've heard it here before, that this is a remarkable issue, that it is not as contentious as it could be. We have the concerns of the residents, and we have the little clubs, very open and honest recommendations to try to adapt this pickleball to their concerns. And I think it's a credit to your leadership of the club. That being said, decisions gonna have to be made one way or the other.
Yeah.
So let's take a month, let's get as much information as we can. Anything else that the club wishes to provide, we certainly want to see.
We appreciate that, and we would like, obviously, the opportunity to work with whatever engineer that you choose. Thank you.
In that regard, in the next steps, I think it's important that you pick a representative, homeowners pick a representative, and you work with the town representative and see if you can't build a consensus. Because my fear is we're gonna be back here with the same big question mark. I've sat down with our town lawyer, give me the definitions of nuisance. Well, we don't have a definition in the code, but then you go to the legal, dictionary. And, if you hear the definition of that, frankly, it's very vague. And then when you get into measuring, is it annoying to the neighbors? I've heard about decibels, I've heard about repetitive hits. But then I've played tennis, and I've listened to the pickleball video. And I thought of pickleball as being a little similar to when I played paddle tennis. And I can tell you that when I played paddle tennis, maybe it's just my group of friends, but we seem to make a lot more noise in terms of the vocal outbursts than in tennis. Tennis is a little more of a, I'll probably be criticized for this, but there's more tradition in the behavior out in paddle tennis. And Sophie, would you agree when we play paddle that it gets a little loud?
I always thought of tennis as long-range warfare, and paddle tennis is like street fighting.
So it's just different. So when these three experts come in, they're gonna have to try to come up with, so I hope that it enlightens everybody so we can walk away with, we all agree. I have a feeling it's gonna be difficult, and if in fact it does, the application is approved, I clearly have some comments about the declaration of use agreement and what I would want to add to it. But I'm not going to address that now because let's take the next step. But I think it's going to be, we all need to recognize that this is a very good effort, and I so strongly endorse the mayor's recommendation, and I'm glad he took that initiative. I appreciate that you're willing. Let's see if we can't get an answer. I just hope we have an answer at the end of this.
I agree, and I think you raised a good point. I do think to some degree a comparison with tennis as part of this will be instructive.
You had mentioned, Rod, that if it were approved and they are playing pickleball and it is creating complaints, that you would look at taking other steps at remediation. What other steps are there?
Well, I'm not an expert on the sound, and obviously we would consult with someone like the individual that was referenced to find out what they could be. There could be better forms of baffling. So as an example, the engineer or scientist that was cited in someone's comments earlier said there's much better baffling equipment than the Acoustablock. Great. That's fantastic. We would be perfectly happy to be using it. We'll use the best that we can get. Again, I'm not a sound expert, but if we needed to put up a concrete wall separating the, and I'm just using this as an example, separating the property because that was going to be effective, we would certainly do that. So I really think we would be guided by whatever recommendations the experts would have to come up with the most sound-effective, cost-effective solution.
The recommended distance, I think, for us is 500 to 600 feet away from residential housing. So I don't know how we get around that if at the end of the month we come up. That's my understanding.
And just tied in with that, there is two or three new croquet courts out right in the middle of the golf course, which would be naturals for pickleball, because the noise would travel, but it would not travel into our backyard. Now, I know that, and Mr. Francis can maybe tell us a little bit about this, there is clear resistance on the part of the golfing community there. But it's a question of to what degree is the Little Club flexible and really trying to find an alternative? And the alternative is sitting there looking at us. And it's right in the middle, and they can move the croquet court back to where they want to put the pickleball courts. You know?
All right, well, I want to thank, on behalf of the commission, thank everybody for their comments. I think we have some guidance as to the direction we need to take. We have an open willingness from the club to work with us and with you. So, your advice in mind, I think it is a good idea to have a representative, one from the group who has concerns, one representative from the club, and then our staff. And go from there. So if there are no other questions from the commission, we will table this item until next month's meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we go?
I'm still up next. I got more to go.
This is your whole, building the meeting around you.
And I said I didn't
I appreciate that. No, I know.
It is a problem.
I'm right here, Jim.
I'm looking for Julia, see if she wants to write back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was almost about to make
No.
Okay, let's move on then to resolution.
Mr. Mayor, we do have Baxter and Woodman here. They're a little farther down the agenda. And I know Ms. Travis has to make a meeting. Can we move her up to the next
Absolutely.
agenda?
I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that. This took longer than we expected, so Rebecca, sure, if you.
So this is following up on the commission's direction for us to, look into a septic to sewer study. We chose to ask Baxter and Woodman to come up with a proposal to do that, and Ms. Travis is here today to ask any questions about that, which I'm sure you do have a number of those. So
This is items for commission action, items 9B, C.
yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay. All right, so, Rebecca, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, so, Rebecca, would you like to make a motion? Okay. All right, so,
Ms. Travis if she could just kind of summarize her proposal on what the deliverables are and the scope of work and that, those issues.
Yes, so Rebecca Travis with Baxter Women, thank you for organizing the schedule for me, appreciate that. So the task before us is to review provision of sewering for the entire town. So we would meet with the town representatives to discuss the service area, review throughout the town how the various residents are being serviced now, if it's a septic tank or if they have their own little station or however that is being conducted now. We would look at the water usage, the potable water usage for each of the houses and trying to determine a flow projection for the town as a whole. We would look at providing or discussing with the city of Delray Beach and the city of Boynton Beach whether from a agreement, fees, capacity standpoint, whether each of those could take whatever flow determination we had. It might be a split, it might be all going to one or the other. We would do a preliminary layout of a conventional gravity sewer system with lift stations or a low pressure system. There could be some existing locations that are currently on they have their own station now that based on depth of gravity sewer, that we may have to maintain them on those private stations. That would be part of the study to determine, the preference would be to get everybody over to the common town system, but that would be part of the review. Then we would prepare a report with recommendations and a construction cost estimate that would have two options. One would be the conventional gravity sewer with the lift stations, and the other option would be the low pressure system. We would look at regulatory impacts as far as how we would be able to permit, which that should be not an issue because the DEP wants everybody to be sewered and not on septic tanks for certain. We're looking at providing a draft report in March. We would present that draft report, recommendations and conclusions to the commission late March, early April timeframe, and then finalize the report in April, May of 20. So that's kind of a summary of what we plan to do.
So you'd be evaluating the existing, what we call private sewer system as part of your report?
We would be evaluating it to see if we could utilize any aspect of it into an overall comprehensive system. The age and whether the existing infrastructure meets code that would be required for a municipal system would have to be determined. So and the age of it would probably lean towards not maintaining what is out there now. Unless we found that there was, based on the finished floor elevation is too low to make it into the sewer that would be in the street, we might have to do some kind of individual lift stations that would either maintain what they have now or, and then if the existing stations are maintained they would have to be brought into the town's system, and then you'd have to get an easement over that to bring that in and then bring it up to code. Or you could leave it with a private owner, and then they would be responsible as they are now for maintaining their lift station.
You could incorporate it into a new plan and be grandfathered in via code changes.
Possibly. The and we would have to make sure that just the age of it hasn't gotten to the point beyond service life. Then if the existing station is on private property, then the town wanted to bring that into the system, the town-owned system, thank you, then we'd have to get an easement over that little station on the private property, and that could be problematic as well. It might be better to just, even if we had to still maintain a small station, we might move it out into the right of way, into a manhole right of way type thing, so.
Okay, thank you.
That's all to be kind of determined.
What was the cost of the study that you're doing? Did you have an estimate?
The proposal is $32,265.
Okay.
Could the existing residents on the local system opt out of the municipal global plan?
There's a regulation that states if there's a public system available within so many feet of your property, made available, this is if you're on a septic tank, that you're required to disconnect from the septic tank system and connect to a public. If you have a private little lift station, I believe you can opt out. We would want them to still pump into the public system. I don't know if they're,
Well,
then we'd have to look at how they're currently pumping and where they're currently pumping, if they're all manifolded into another station, and how that would work. If you have one person opt out and everybody else connects, then whether the hydraulics would still work for the.
There's a home getting improved, and I was talking to the fellow about this private system, and basically told me it's about a $40,000 investment. So this resident just spent $40,000. I know what the question's gonna be. They'll have to pay again. So that's why I'm curious about the opting out.
I would say that if the system that's put in, it can be modified to pump to the public system, and they maintained maintained it and operated it, that we could let them opt out. It just depends on.
That's gonna be a question that
Right.
our study will
Yes.
address.
Yeah, I mean, I would say not so much opting out for the septic, if you have a septic tank, that's gonna have to go. Just because of water quality.
Right. I'm talking about the private system.
Yes.
But these are some questions, obviously, you guys will anticipate and try to address.
And also the
Yes.
golf club just spent a lot of money going into the private system. They spent a fortune.
Which, Little Club?
The golf club.
Oh, the golf club.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, there wouldn't be if there's service provided now, and it's not a septic tank, we would certainly look at the condition and the operation of what's there. And, maybe there's some systems that are right now, they're going into a Delray pump station and repumping over the intercoastal, and, I don't see a wholesale replacement of that for any reason.
I can kind of give
You
you a
know-
little bit
you
of
know more-
insight on it. It's actually being done through a forced main that's feeding to Boynton's cleanout, because they have a lift station here that's pumped over to them, so. Right now, at this present time, the individual homes are being pumped into a forced main on our own side that feeds to this cleanout that's here for Boynton, and then Boynton receives it.
That's true.
Right, so, yeah, there would be no reason to reinvent the wheel if something's.
So, just to be clear, so the private would stay private and then the other ones would go public. And so how would you work that out to pay for this? I mean, would it be like the undergrounding? I'm just curious.
Well, the town would determine if they're gonna do some kind of a utility fund, bond, grant monies,
Well,
yeah.
because the private people, like 40,000, and all the people who are in the private, I mean, I paid 25 years ago, and now it's 40. And so we've all paid to go on a private, I'm just saying this when you do your study. We've
Yeah.
all paid our part to go into this private, and then we're gonna pay again for other people to go to the public. That's all I'm asking, how would you work that out?
The payment would be made based on who gains the benefit. If we have a whole street that's already, let's say like Plaza Soleil, I mean,
Yeah, they're not.
we're not gonna,
You're not gonna benefit.
yeah.
But wouldn't we have our own system?
You already have your system, we would look at still the capacity townwide, we're looking at everybody's
We're
flow.
on septic.
Yeah, place on
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
so you put all the
So
sewer,
we,
yeah.
but I would assume, because of our location, we would definitely be on a gravity system and then
Mhm.
either pump directly into Del Rey or Boynton, I was
Yeah.
just seeing where the hookups would be.
And I think your infrastructure is closer to Delray, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Del Rey.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so the financing of how the funding would be distributed and whether, who paid for what, that's beyond this study, but yeah, I mean, there certainly is questions about, if I'm already sewered, or I already have my own system and I'm working fine and not on a septic tank.
Well, also, I think
And-
Plaza Soleil would be easier to sewer than some parts of Boston.
Mhm.
I would think, because it's right all
Yeah,
there.
like some areas we might end up putting, 2 or 3 new lift stations to serve, whereas Plaza Soleil, we might do conventional gravity sewer, which is less expensive.
Yeah, okay.
But how do you,
Yeah, I
So
don't know,
that- yeah.
that was a question. That's all.
It's definitely, it always comes down to how do you pay for it and how
Yeah.
is the cost distributed to the customers? And, that's another, it's not part of this, but it's definitely, yeah, so we would look at, we would have a property listing and an address and say, here's how these people are currently being served, and here's what they would need to have done to provide service under the proposed recommendation, and then we would identify how each property's being served, but we wouldn't say, okay, this person pays 10,000, that person pays 20,000, or whatever. It's gonna be a total cost of what it costs the sewer, and then the next step would be a assessment study, or however
Right.
you wanted to.
Yeah, but we need to have an
Pay
overview,
for
I
it.
guess,
No,
it seems
that's
to me, and particularly the health of the current private system,
Mhm.
whether it can incorporate into a new system or not.
And, what we don't know is any kind of mandates that the state or the federal government might, set forth for towns and cities as to some of the questions that we have. I mean, we have no idea what those might be,
Right.
so.
If they mandate, do you have any experience with, if they mandate, do the taxpayers just pay, or does the government come in and help out? Do you have any experience with that?
There are grants that are available through, to look at contamination of adjacent waterways because of septic tanks and trying to sewer areas, so there are grants for that. Typically though, if you're a municipality or a town or a county, whatever, and you're sewering a neighborhood, it's usually an assessment, and it's usually based on, ERU, a unit, residential unit, so,
Yeah,
that's typically how it's done.
Okay. it's like a telephone line.
Right, yeah, and that's usually, not individually determined, aside from, okay, you use X amount of potable water, and you're a typical residential user of water volume, and then that sets it, and then, so maybe a multifamily would pay a different assessment rate from a single family, but in commercial and industrial, but it's usually an assessment.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Curious?
Laying the groundwork and everything for the sewer system, would that have any effect on the CIP, like repaving of the streets, like tearing them up after we put them down?
Yeah, absolutely, I mean.
Right, so, yeah, so the CIP was prepared looking at water main improvements and road improvements. And now we really need to shift the sewer, because you're right, you're not gonna tear up the road that you just paved. You're hopefully gonna do the sewer first, and, if that's,
The communities that have gone over to sewers, is it because they wanted to, is that primarily when public done it, or because they were mandated to do it?
probably a little of both. A lot of times, you know, people can't, replace their septic system because there's a mandate, and because there's available sewering, and they're trying to just limp along until they can connect to the sewer coming in. But you have to have an option. You can't just mandate that somebody has to give up their septic tank when there's nothing to connect to, so it's kind of a.
That's what, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, there is a little bit of an urgency to this as we're having this discussion, because the people who are on septics, that septic system goes, they only have one option now, right, to go to the private system?
Well,
Don't they
I
have?
don't think, are there options?
Well, if they're close, if they're within the proximity, if I'm not mistaken, the proximity, I think it's 50 feet of any connection to where they can get sewage, then they have to connect to it, whether they want to or not, by law. If
If the
it's
system can
if it's more
maintain
than 50,
Right,
then
if it's
they
less than
have the opportunity possibly to go in and revamp the system that they have with certain limitations.
Really what I'm getting at is, you know, we have quite a lot of turnover, houses getting improved, people putting in, most people I see, tell me if I'm correct, huh? Most people putting in, or connecting to this private system when they do new houses?
Yes, I mean, if it's close enough to do, I mean, we did,
Yeah,
Mr.
we
Mayor's-
have already
Mr.
drawn
Mayor,
the infrastructure. I
Coke's
just don't know
house
that,
just, Mr. Coke's house just connected,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, so, point is, people are spending money, so we need to, because I know this issue is gonna come back to what you raised, and I raised earlier, which is, I just spent $40,000.
And now I'm getting assessed what?
Yeah, so I just think, and I say urgency, that's a relative term, but I'm glad we're looking at it, because,
I do think there's an urgency about the private sewer anyway, an
Yeah.
urgency during the study, because whether, we are probably not gonna take it, but is it properly maintained and how long will it last? Because I don't know if anyone's ever looked at that lately, because if we have half the port area go down, that's gonna be a problem.
That
It's
should be
gonna be a
that
problem
should be
for
a
us.
primary feature of your investigation, is the condition of the private sewer. Because my understanding is that with all the recent attachments to it,
Yeah,
we are now reaching capacity for that system. That then begs the question of whether or not there is an option available for other homes, or whether they're 50 feet or more than 50 feet near the system. The system can't take anymore. So,
yeah, and also if this private, we can say, oh, it's private, it's not our problem. It is our problem. At the end of the day, it's the town problem, because we can't have sewage out in the middle of the street.
right, and exactly.
If there's a problem, they're not gonna go to Mr. Swade, they're gonna.
That is
They're
true.
gonna
That's
come
what I
to
was
us.
trying to say.
Right.
They would come right to us.
It's very important that we understand
But I think we need to know where we
issues
stand.
with this,
Yeah.
set private sewer. Good.
Well, the intent is to look at a system that would have a connection point for every single property. So let's say we run sewer down a street that has these individual private lift stations. We would still put a gravity sewer connection to the lot line, so that in the future, if they decided they wanted to get off the individual private pump station, they could connect in there. So this whole system would ultimately still be able to have the capacity to take everybody on. Now, whether the timing's right for, you know, whether they're ready to come onto the system or not, but,
I don't know, do you have two sewer systems like that? I mean, going
Well,
private,
you
you have
know.
a private and a gravity, I mean, you come back with your study. I mean, it's just, I don't see that happening. You either have to have one or the other.
yeah,
I mean,
I
I think come back with your
see-
study.
Yeah, let's take a,
Yeah, it's a unique situation because you've got kind of a patchwork of different things happening. And
Yeah.
how do you bring it all into one
Because it's
concise?
expensive to do the gravity and then you're going to have the.
Well, we could put a, you know, stub out with the intention of later on putting the sewer down that street that currently is being served by a
this could be
private
done
system.
incrementally.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be
Yeah.
giving us
I think
alternatives.
the study is a proper thing.
Uh,
That's all. I don't ask any more questions.
Fine, fine.
Great. Well, we have before us the engineering services for wastewater feasibility study. With a quote of $32,265 for Baxter Equipment. Is there a motion to
I would
approve?
like to approve that, the 32,200, what is it, 200?
65?
$32,265.
Okay, that's it.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northwhite?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
We're spending a lot more than
Hey, the mayor, we got 125.
Well,
150.
We'll see, we've got that issue to address on that as well. Okay, let's move on, it's getting late, so let's move on to resolution 19-12, Ms. Taylor.
Resolution of Town Commission of the Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving and adopting the 2020 revised Palm Beach County Local Mitigation Strategy Plan, providing an effective date and for other purposes, presented for adoption this 8th day of November 2019.
Resolution number 19-12 has been read for our approval, is there a motion?
I so move to approve resolution 19-12. It's right here, it's on the new agenda.
It's the new.
That's in it.
It's, I know, I was looking at this one and I was going, what?
Yeah,
It's the first one on
No,
this.
it's 19.
I second.
It's on your amended agenda.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northwite?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Move on to resolution 19-13.
This is a resolution of Town Commission, Town of Gulfstream, Florida, providing for the appropriations of budget revenues and expenditures in the general fund for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019, providing an effective date. Be it resolved that the Town Commission, Town of Gulfstream, Florida, that the following reappropriations, be made. It's miscellaneous, professional services, which are building inspections as an expenditure, shown as a debit, $217,696. Inspection fee, which is a revenue item, the credit in the same amount, $217,696, being presented for adoption this 8th day of November 2019.
Any questions on the resolution? Nope. Terry, I have.
I move to approve resolution number 19-13.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northwite?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Move to resolution 19-14, Ms. Taylor.
A resolution of Town Commission, Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving and authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement between Palm Beach County and the Town of Gulfstream to provide direct radio communication between 9/11 public safety answering points and on duty town personnel, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. That's being presented for adoption this 8th day of November 2019.
Resolution 19-14 has been read for our approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve resolution 19-14.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northline?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes. Thank you very much. There's a proposal to replace 3 fire hydrants. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, as you can see, we did take bids for the replacement of 3 fire hydrants. One is completely out of order, and the other 2 we have some pressure issues with, and they need to be replaced. We considered this an emergency, and so we did, get the bids and have instructed Southern Pipeline, which was the lowest bidder, to start the work, and we're asking you to approve this retroactively. If you have any questions about with any of the particular fire hydrants, I have Anthony here to answer those questions.
Are there any questions? This was an emergency. It had to be dealt with and done well. So is there a motion to approve the retroactively bill award to Southern Pipeline to replace the fire hydrants and associated main work, water main work, in the amount of $36,075?
You want me to do this, Paul? I'll move to approve the 36,075 Southern Pipeline that we've already done the work on.
Second.
I'll second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northline?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes. Let's move on to the Information Technology Services Agreement.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you recall, 1 year ago, we entered into a new agreement for information technology services. We purposely only made this for 1 year, but we've been very happy with the services that they've provided us over the past year, and we would like to extend this another 2 years for your approval.
If you're in favor of it, I'm certainly, my only question is that, do you have to put out for rebid, or you can keep extending the contracts?
Pursuant to the terms of the contract, we were able to extend it for an
Okay, gotcha.
additional 2 years, so we've done that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Very good. Is there a motion to approve extending the contract with Calvin Giordano and Associates in the town of Gulfstream for an additional 2 years on their information technology service?
All those.
Okay, I move that we approve an extension for 2 years of the Calvin Giordano Associates in Town of Gulfstream Technology Services Agreement.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Northline?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes. Finally, there's a lien release modification at 2775 Oppenheimer Way that we discussed last night. Mr. Nazar?
I just wanted to thank Ms. Stanton for her patience.
I know, my husband's surfing, he's like, no, you should be there. You should be there. And yes, in El Salvador, he left early yesterday morning, and my nanny doesn't get till 2 because it's date night, and I have plans, even though he's not here. I've been going out with my girlfriend, so I couldn't ask the nanny to come earlier. So we've been here since 9, and
so
she's
sorry.
been so good, so.
Sure has.
She has, she's been really, really good. So.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you.
For the
No,
meetings normally do not last this long.
Yes, I called him, I said, I can't get in, it's packed. He said, what? Are you sure? I
Well,
said,
people
yeah,
are
it's
concerned
fine."
about your property modification.
And they all stay apart.
Okay, let's address it. Mr. Nazar, could you bring us up to speed?
Yes, sir. So as you know, last month we counteroffered for $125,000 to release the lien at 2775 Avenue Osler Way. That was, has been accepted by the estate. In working out the specifics, the estate and Mr. Stanton, the adjacent neighbor, he indicated that in combining the two properties, which is his intention, he wants to keep 2 walls of the existing structure. He had a concern that because one of the conditions of the release of lien was a demolition, that he would not be able to get the lien released. He just wanted to clarify, can I just go ahead and leave these 2 walls and incorporate them into the structure that I'm building that will be located on one large piece of property that is the combined 2775 Avenue Osley and his current residence, which is at 2765. So those conditions would just be modified as indicated in this memo from Mr. Dunham. Payment of $125,000 to the town, that the structure located at 2775 Avenue Osley be completely demolished except for the 2 walls as indicated on a survey that we have as part of the memo, it's part of the agenda packet. And that the lots of 2775 and 2765 Avenue Osley be joined in unity of title. Mr. Stanton indicated he had no problem with that additional condition because that's his intent. So that would sort of ensure that both parties are getting exactly what they want. I know that the architect is here, is that right? So if you had any specific questions, he might be able to address them, but I think this is fairly straightforward as far as you know, as long as you understand exactly what walls are being kept and how that is incorporated into Mr. Stanton's plan.
The only question would be the timing of demolition. I think we have a 60-day time period after demolition to commence construction, so that this demolition with the remaining 2 walls would not occur until such time as their plans are approved and you're ready to begin construction. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I believe I spoke with the closing company last week, and they said depending on whether this has to go to probate court, unfortunately, it may be tied up until possibly the beginning of next year before we can close. They were unable to give us a closing date. They said at best case it would be at the end of the month, but it might be at the beginning of next year, depending on how the probate court goes. So as soon as, you know, all of that is cleared, and of course, we wouldn't do any demolition right up until we got all the plans approved.
Right. Okay. Thank you for letting us know that. Any questions of Mrs. Stanton or the architect?
Sorry, we have to wait so long.
Yes. I have no problem.
Two walls, would it be in your existing house or? No, it would be.
Well, our existing house is.
Actually, if you don't mind, I have some plans with graphics that actually shows it, so it's very clear. I highlighted them in yellow. I have a few copies if you want to look. It's highlighted in yellow. And I
The
have.
tennis court's staying where it is.
Yes.
I remember that was very important.
Yeah. That's very, very important.
Tennis, not pickleball, right?
Tennis, not pickleball,
Yeah,
yes.
actually, I also have an aerial view of the same thing if you're interested, so you can take a look at that as well.
A basketball.
The aerial view, I think, gives a more,
Yeah, maybe if you want to also, that gives you a reference to what you are looking at.
Oh, interesting.
So you're retaining those 2 walls and extending them into the other property?
Exactly.
I see, yeah. And what do you envision using that space for?
It's going to be part of the AC living space, and then the second floor, the yellow line that you see on the aerial, that second floor is segmented. A portion of it is over the that area, that garage area, and then the rest of it is over the main house.
So this is sort of like a pool house,
Yeah,
whatever, looking at the
something
pool.
like that.
Yes.
Yes.
House on the side?
Again, this is extremely preliminary. We haven't come up with a comprehensive floor plan of how it's going to look like, but just to give an idea.
So most of that lot will be vacant then?
well, we're moving the pool to that
Your
side.
pool is going to, it says pool, if you look at the aerial, it says pool on it.
No,
And that-
but still there'll be a lot of open land.
Yeah, and the area in the back, our plan is to kind of put almost like a turf and put a playground and a tree house and so forth. That's our desire. Got third one on the way. We're really looking for. We want to stay. We're out of room at our current house, so we either have to move or. And this just came so timely. We really love the property.
be a garage, actually, this extension
Right.
across the front.
Part of it.
Part of
Part
it,
of it,
and then,
yes.
and then pool, of course. Right. Okay.
And you'll be glad to hear, after speaking with Mr. Stanton, that most of all of these huge shade trees and landscaping are pretty much gonna stay.
Yeah, including the mango tree.
Oh, that's
Love
good.
that
We're-
mango tree.
We're delighted with the way this is resolving itself.
Yes.
And by the way, thank you, this is a very good exhibit, it's very
Yeah,
clear.
really.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
I would move to, accept the lien release, that's in the modification with the two remaining walls, we make it all one.
You could just, as written in the town manager's memo.
Okay, as written in the town manager's memo.
A second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments? If not, this meeting's adjourned.
Right.
Have a nice big
Mary, you did a
playground.
good job today.